Good morning, and thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to share this hour with you, or maybe a little longer with Q&A, because it just shows me that you're ready to invest some time into yourself. And so I'm also grateful. I know your time is your most precious commodity. I can't give this hour back to you, but what I'm really hoping to do is that by you spending this 1 hour with me this morning, you will actually be getting a big return on your investment, like the prior attendees of this Breaking Up with Pajama Charting workshop. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Erin Hurley. I am a physician, and I'm also a coach, a certified high performance coach, a life coach, and a full focus certified pro. And all that may just sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. I don't know if you've heard of coaching in medicine or its role in medicine. I'll share a little bit about that with you today. And also, we'll get to experience some coaching on the call. So I'm really excited about having you here. This is meant to be interactive. So I love seeing your video screen on. And my hope is that you can engage with this time together and that you will have real takeaways, and like other participants, that on Monday morning, or if you're in clinic tomorrow, you get to show up the very next day you're working and put these practices into place and save so much time. And so with that, I just want to explain a little bit about why am I here? Why am I teaching this? So I practiced in pediatric medicine for 25 years, and charting was one of the biggest issues that I had during my career. And I have learned so much during my coaching journey, during working on personal development for the last 6 years, looking into learning from experts so that I can find out what's going on. Why are some of us struggling so much? I also realized that what I thought was a me problem, an Erin problem with charting, I was always the last one at the office. I always knew the names of the cleaning crew. We were on, first name basis, missed lots of meals and bedtimes with my kids. And what I realized as I started coaching women in medicine and interacting with more people in medicine is that it wasn't a me issue. It was so widespread, but people weren't talking about it. Maybe people were embarrassed about what their in baskets looked like, or maybe they were embarrassed about their backlog of charts, or that their MA needed to follow up with them because orders weren't put in or things weren't wrapped up after patient care. And so maybe some of this you can relate to some of this as well. And what I found is that by putting some of the research-based practices into place, we can have game-changing results. So maybe you have seen me share in my newsletters that some people using these practices on the very next day got through 80% of their charting in real time the very next day. And then, we're out of the office at 5:30 on a busy, packed Monday. They're getting results that they're describing as unheard of. So I was talking about, the widespread issue of charting, and that not everybody is willing to talk about it. Maybe it's your well-kept secret, and yet there's so many people struggling. And when you look at some of the research, we're going to share some of the research-based methods to help fix the charting problem. But some of the research shows that women in medicine spend a full 1.5 times longer in the EHR than men physicians. And so I don't have as much data for nurse practitioners and PAs, but similar, I would assume similar things. And also that on average, we're spending, it's either 9.2 or 9.3 hours on average per provider per week charting after hours. And so maybe you can put in the chat, when you get your charting done. Are you spending your evenings, weekends? Maybe how much time do you estimate per week that you're spending on charting? And you can put that in the chat so I can get a sense for where you're at. Again, this will be interactive. And so because it's such a big pain point, and we're seeing rates of depression, anxiety, burnout, physician suicide, all escalating. It was bad before the pandemic, and now it's even worse. And what I see is that I can help people make huge shifts in the amount of time that they're spending charting, And that can kind of open up a wedge in our tightly packed schedules where we don't even think we have time to get a full night's sleep or to take a break during lunch or do any self-care. Can anybody relate to any of those things? Right? We are taught to not have boundaries and to put everyone's needs before our own. And it's a huge cost, because one of the other things that women physicians and some other female healthcare providers like nurses are at higher risk for divorce. And then when I look at what's all the long-term consequences when someone gets a divorce, likely related to the job demands and what that cost is, the financial implications, the emotional implications, the relationship implications, it's huge. And so when you add up all those things, especially for female providers, and I'm not saying that men have it easy either, and then you add how much time women spend, more time than their male partners, in childcare duties and household duties, that adds up to a lot of self-sacrifice in order to keep at this really tough job. And many people are exiting the job. So my passion is, I pivoted from practicing full-time medicine as a medical director to part-time medicine, and I started coaching and helping people with wellness and support. And then I decided a year ago to pivot because I was worried we're not going to have providers for ourselves in a few years. It's dire circumstances. And my hope is that by sharing all these resources that I've learned about with each of you, and then we can continue spreading that information, we will make a ripple effect in medicine. And my hope is that I want to make medicine a place where we can have joy and celebrate our careers and not have some of the things I've talked to my own coaching clients about their dread, about hating their jobs, about resentment towards their patients. And I don't know if any of you have felt any of that, but we didn't go into medicine for that. We didn't go into medicine to spend every waking hour charting. And so let's see what we can do to make a difference. And I am really excited about getting started with you all this morning. For some of you, this hour workshop and the Q&A will be all you need to show up and master charting on the next day you're in clinic. For other people, you're going to need a little extra support, knowledge, hand-holding, and maybe some coaching, which is baked into this workshop, and the support that I offer afterwards. So for those of you who might need some extra support at the end of the call, I'm going to talk about what's available for you. And between this and a follow-up course that I offer, it's like a 1-2 punch for getting charting really, put back into a smaller box where it belongs, so it's not having such an impact. So this might be your starting point, right? And thinking about, what's your backlog look like? How many charts do you have open? How much time is it costing you, even if you're not behind on charts? Everybody has a little bit of a different story. Maybe it's not the charts, maybe it's your in-basket, and we'll talk a little bit more about those details. So if this is how you feel about your charts right now, my hope is at the end we'll be at a different place. We're going to be talking about 3 different buckets of information today. The first is going to be mindset. And what I know, and what I hope each of you know, is that we are with ourselves 24/7. This mind of yours has the most impact on your life, more than anyone else in the world. And so let's start using that to our advantage and start shifting our mindset where we need to. And we'll go through a little exercise to do that. Does anyone here suffer or struggle with asking for support or help, whether it's at home or the office? Anyone else relate to that? We were taught in medicine to be independent, to figure things out on our own. And so that asking for help is oftentimes we wait till the very last minute. We try to do it all by ourselves. Or, oh, it'll just take me 2 minutes. It'll take them 10. I'll just do it myself. It's too complicated to teach someone else to do it. And what that does is it just keeps, I look at our plates as we have these, the big turkey platters that you might use for holiday meals, big, enormous platters that might feed 15 or 20 people. So instead of each of us having like a normal sized dinner plate or salad plate, we have, as our list of things to do and obligations, an enormous turkey platter meant for 15 to 20 people. And not only is it enormous, it is piled sky high because we don't ask for help. We don't delegate. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that can look like and how we might be able to do a better job at asking for support, because that will be strategic in helping you successfully change how you're charting. The last one, and I love talking about the clock, is let's use the clock to our advantage. And some people talk about time blindness. They go in a patient room, they have no idea how long they've been in there. The next thing they know, their MA's knocking on the door because it's been 40 minutes for a 30-minute appointment. Anybody be able to relate with that? So let's get away from that and let's use the clock to our advantage. And I have a ton of research-based methods that we can rearrange how our work is done and get much more streamlined results, maybe 5 times more productivity in the same amount of time. Let's talk a little bit about mindset. And one of the things I want to share is that I shared a little bit at the beginning of this call, my struggles with charting. I hit a low point when my youngest son was 4 and he was hospitalized. He'd been having fevers to 104. He was lethargic and just not himself. And on day 10, we realized he had a new onset of systemic juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So really devastating illness. As a pediatrician, I knew what those implications were for his ongoing health. And at the hospital, it was really scary, not only for our 4-year-old, but also for my husband and myself. And I still remember the day he had swelling in his wrist and they were doing a sedated MRI. My husband's holding our son in his arms and they're putting the sedation in his IV. And my husband's a tough guy. He's a firefighter. He's seen so much trauma in his life. And for this man to hold his vulnerable child in his arms and just see his body go limp, and the sheer terror on my husband's face is, it was a scary time. And yet during that 2 days that we were in the hospital, instead of being fully connected with my husband and fully there with my son, snuggling with him in his bed when he was taking a nap or sleeping, instead, there was this computer in the room that gave me access to my own patient charts, my own in-basket. And during those times where my son was otherwise occupied, sleeping or napping, instead of connecting with him or having some talks with my husband about how are we going to manage, we had, 3-year-old twins, 4-year-old twins at home, and no, not, they were 7-year-old twins at home, and then our 4-year-old. How are we going to manage this in our already really complicated lives? I was a leader in my organization, had a full panel, and it was just, I wasn't able to fully engage. And that computer was like a magnet. I had this this draw. I have to get these things done. The charts that were undone from the prior week. I have staff that I supervise. And so I didn't ask for that. I asked for the days off, but I didn't ask for the support. Hey, can you guys manage this while I'm away so I can fully engage? Are there any emergencies that I need to take care of? But I didn't see that I didn't feel like I had any other options. So what happened was, thankfully, my son recovered in 2 months. We haven't seen any of that illness since then, but it took me 7 full years to find a different way of doing medicine. And for me, I actually switched the trajectory of my career. I pivoted from general pediatrics with overnight call, weekend hospital duties, to a specialty that didn't have call nights or weekends. And what happened is I was still at the office nights and weekends. I was still letting work come in. I was looking for work-life balance, but I brought my same habits into my new work. And then I got those same results. Still there late at night with the cleaning crew, still, doing charting, still coming in on the weekends to get things done, even though they were closed. So in 7 years after that hospitalization, though, I signed up with a high-performance coach. And that was the secret sauce that I needed in order to do things differently. And within 6 weeks, instead of being at the office till 7, 8, 9 o'clock when we closed at 5, I was leaving at 6 every day. Instead of staying there to get one more thing done and missing my 4th grader's first orchestra concert because I was trying to do that one more chart, get one more thing done, I was now coming home regularly and even sometimes early, much to the shock of my children. And so it's possible to change. I was 20 years into my medical career before I started making those pivots. So I've seen individuals that I've worked with this workshop and with follow-up support who are there in their first year of practice and they're 30 plus years in practice, and they've all been having significant improvements. And so my hope is that you can see you can also have some major shifts. And so let's get started in working on a mindset shift. And what I'm going to do is walk you through a little mini coaching exercise. And are any of you familiar with coaching in medicine, or have any of you experienced it? Maybe you can put in the chat what your understanding is. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and I'm going to ask you to put in the chat what your circumstances are right now. How many charts are you behind? Or how many things are in your in basket? And if you're not behind right now, or if you just put in extra time to stay caught up, what is that costing you? And, kind of to show me why are you here? So what's your current circumstance that you're in right now with charting backlog? Just put that in the chat. Okay, so we have one hospitalist. Maybe what you can do is think about what's the cost, like how many hours are you there after your shift should end doing charts? Extra 1 to 2 hours a night charting, finishing up note, 132 emails behind. Okay, so these are common. So I'm just going to pick a number. Let's say I am 20 charts behind and I have, over 100 things in my basket to take care of. Working late to finish charts into the weekend, 20 charts behind on the regular. Okay, so you're not alone. I'm going to pick the 20 number. So let's say I'm 20 charts behind. Then I'm going to think about what are my thoughts about that? What do you tell yourself? What do you think about yourself or your circumstances based on I'm in a different career, I'm still running behind, I still have things in my in basket. So what's a 1-line or 2-line thought that comes from your current circumstances or your usual circumstances? And if you can put that in the chat for me as well, please. This has to change. Overwhelm. I'm gonna prod a little more. So there's a thought. So the overwhelm to me would be a feeling. And actually, I'm going to ask, what's the feeling that comes from the thought? So when I was, if I'm 20 charts behind, I might say, geez, Erin, you were just caught up 2 weeks ago. How did you let this happen again? Why is everyone else finished with their work in half the time it takes you? Why are you ruining another weekend because you just can't figure it out? So anyone, if you have anything else you want to add to your thought based on your current circumstances, any other additions to your thoughts about how your circumstances that you put in the chat, how that makes you think about yourself or your circumstances? I should be able to figure this out. Okay. And then that feeling of frustration, not finding balance by now. Okay. I can't keep this up. I need to quit my job. Yeah. Very, very common. And again, that's why I'm here. And so what I'd like you to think of next, if you haven't already landed on a feeling, you might even want to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart and say, when I say that about myself, I can't keep this up. I've got to quit my job. How does that make you feel? What's the emotion, the vibration in your body? What does that make you feel when you think that thought? And if you can put that in the chat, just land on one most relevant thought based on that feeling. Anxious. Yeah, somebody had put ahead, frustrated, talking about quitting, giving up. And so if sad, okay, I used to love my job and now I'm sad. Okay. So when you connect with that feeling, I want you to think about when you're feeling sad, anxious, frustrated, What are the actions you take? Maybe list 2 or 3 actions you take. And then also, what are the actions you're not taking, maybe that you should be taking? So you're behind on charts, feeling sad, overwhelmed, frustrated, thinking, I can't do this anymore. What are the actions you take when you're feeling that way? What are the things you're not doing when you're feeling that way? Okay. Procrastination. Okay. And then you nailed it there. So, um, then putting things off, then when I'm overwhelmed, only making the problem worse. And so as we get to the end of what we call this coaching model is the results are when we think, I can't do this anymore, I'm sad, and then we don't take the actions we need to and we further procrastinate. The result is we make it even harder to get caught up on our charts, even harder to get our work done. So that's what it's called an unintentional model. We show up and just allow our thoughts to drive our feelings, to drive our actions, to drive our results. And so what I wanted to do is raise awareness about, can we create intention every single day? When we bring intention and we know that we're with our mind 24/7, what are we going to do in order to tap into our thought process, which will then drive what feeling do we need to have? So if our goal is at the end of this workshop, I want to do charting in real time, right? That applies to hospitalists as well as outpatient medicine. I want to do my charting in real time. Then we need to ask ourselves, what actions would we need to take in order to do that? What things do we need to not do? When we're procrastinating, what are we doing instead? Scrolling on social media, chilling out, whatever those things are where you're checking out instead of getting work done. Or I see I'm exhausted by the end of the day, right? And so we're going to talk about some of that. So then in order to do those actions you need to do and the actions you need to not do, what feeling do you need to feel? So if you're going to do the work you need to do your charting differently, have enough energy to not fall prey to exhaustion, to get out of that feeling of sadness, which might lead to procrastination, share with me a feeling that you would need to feel coming into your workday that will allow you to try some new things and be able to get different results. Can you put in the chat, what feeling would you need to feel to drive different actions? I see energized and supported, focused and inspired, hopeful and energetic. All right. What I want to share with you is that we can tap into those emotions on demand by choosing to have a different thoughts. So if you choose a different thought, what thoughts are going to generate the feeling of focused? What thought will generate the feeling of hope? Can you substitute for those prior, I can't do this, I got to quit, this isn't sustainable, my job is making me sad? What thought do you need to replace that prior thought in order to generate those feelings that are going to drive you to different actions and different results? Can you create a one-line thought that will generate that feeling for you? And it needs to be believable. So if I said on Monday morning, I'm showing up and I'm just getting all my charts done, your subconscious may say you're full of, you know what, not going to happen. Versus, I am smart enough to get through my medical training. I've done really hard things before. I can learn new ways to chart. Or I can learn new ways to chart to have great patient outcomes without the self-sacrifice. I am capable. So what is your subconscious? What can you get behind 100%? And it might be a stretch, right? Because the other thought was easy. You've been doing it for a long time. So something you can fully get behind and remind yourself when that other thought starts creeping in, you say, nope, you're not serving me. This is the new thought. And put that in the chat. Perfection is not possible. And we're going to talk a little more about perfectionism. Thank you for adding that. Anyone else have a thought? The time and treatment I gave is enough. Yeah, this is good enough. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to go back to screen sharing here. Okay, so back to mindset. We're going to do a little summary slide here. So we talked about we all have circumstances, and those can be thought of as neutral. The number 20 charts, it's better than 50, worse than 10, but it's just a number. So can we look at that as that's just my circumstances and not let us get so emotionally hooked and say, okay, what are my thoughts about the circumstances? And if those aren't serving me and I'm not getting the results I want, then what can I substitute that so I get a thought that will serve me? And then what feeling do I want to generate instead of what am I allowing my old thoughts to generate? What feeling do I want to generate in order to create the actions that I need to do and the actions that I need to not do to create the results I want, charting in real time? Does that make sense? So that's one part of mindset. And again, this is where coaching comes into play and where that helped me shift old mindsets when I started working with someone to challenge me and help provide some of that insight. And there's many costs with after hours charting. One is time. On average 9.2 or 9.3 hours a week. For some people, many, many more hours of after hours charting. When I do some math with the number of hours, because most of us aren't paid for charting, it's uncompensated time. And so when you do the math, and if you took, let's say $100 an hour and multiply that times 9 hours per week of after hours charting, and if you work a 48-hour work week, that's around $42,000 or $43,000 a year that someone at that salary is leaving on the table, giving away of their time. Multiply that over years. One client that I was working with and provided the resources she needed to stop doing her after hours charting within 4 weeks of starting to work with her. In her 15 years of practice, I estimated that she gave away over $400,000 in time. And for my own career, I estimate I probably gave over $1 million away in uncompensated time. That's a lot when we add up all of those pieces of time. And so money, right? What is that not allowing you to do? If you charted more quickly, could you see more patients and not have it put you that much more in the time debt, right? So what could you do with that time or freeing up that time? And then our relationships. How is this impacting our relationships? And I shared my own story of impacting how I behaved when my child was in the hospital. I look back at that with guilt and shame, thinking, I wish I thought that there could have been another way. And there was, I just didn't know. So how is charting affecting relationships? And for the one client that I shared that stopped after hours charting within 4 weeks of me working with her, what she realized is that even though at the end of every week, every Friday night after dinner, she would hole away, do her charting late into the night, the other family members were doing fun things. She missed out on it every night for decades. And even though Saturday, Sunday, she wasn't charting because she got it all done Friday, it's still because she wasn't doing it in real time, carried this burden. And what she realized when she finally did the charting in real time, she was spending time with her teenager on the weekend and realized, I don't feel like I need to have an agenda for every moment of every day. First time she'd felt that. I don't need to have an agenda. I can have true leisure time with my family because I'm not feeling the burden of that 2-ton weight on me of my undone work or the work that's really cutting into my time and energy. That was huge. Imagine how her child felt. They knew and like, oh, mom doesn't have to have us on the clock or we don't have to be productive every moment of every day. because time was so precious. You couldn't afford to waste any of it because there wasn't enough of it to go around. All right. The other thing about mindset is if we can create rules when we tap into our mind at a time where we're going to make good decisions for ourselves. So for me, I do weekly planning for my week, reflect on my prior week every Sunday. And if I make rules, I'm going to go to bed by this time. I'm going to leave the office by this time. I'm going to make sure Saturdays are dedicated to family time. And then when that time comes, I follow the rules. Because in the moment when I'm exhausted, if I said I'm going to leave at 6 o'clock and I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know that I can finish these charts within an hour of clinic closing. This time, I'm just going to not do that. We're breaking the rules, and then it's not going to help us at all. So if we make rules and start at a place where we think we can successfully follow them, and then we start following those rules, it's going to create new habits, and it's going to change how we look at time and how we manage time with our workflow. Then this concept of land the planes. So we're going to pretend that we're air traffic controllers and that you have your first plane take off. That's your first patient of the day. And your goal is to have one plane in the air at a time. The plane takes off when they check in or when they're admitted to your floor. Your support staff does their thing. You go in and you do your thing. And then you usually have orders and referrals and all those other things and your chart note. And those all are part of landing the plane. And the goal is to not have plane number 2 take off. You go see your second hospitalized patient. You see your second patient of the day, and you've still got plane number 1 in the air. So share in the chat with me, if you were to do that throughout your day, how many patients do you have hospitalized? How many patients do you see in a day? How many planes would you have in the air by the end of an average workday? If you can put that in the chat. 5, okay. And so, and for some outpatient medicine folks, they might be seeing 15 to 30 patients in a day. So imagine you're an air traffic controller and you have 5 to 30 planes in the air. How safe do you think it is to be on those planes? How long do you think when you have 15 in the air, it will take to land each one versus you have 1 plane in the air or maybe 2 planes in the air? And so if we can get our planes in the air and then land them in real time, it will do many things. It's going to increase the quality of your charting. It will wrap up everything and actually be able to let you park that and get it out of your brain, dump it out. So now you're fully engaged with the next one instead of having all these other planes in the air, taking your mental and emotional drain on you because you haven't fully landed them. And so the more we can do that in real time, and it will take you less time. Think about you have your first patient of the day and you do that chart note. How long would that take you to finish in real time? So many clients that I've worked with, they're like, it might take me 3 to 5 minutes to just finish it instead of moving on to the next. Whereas at the end of the day, we're now those planes in the air are a tangled mess. And now you've got to extract this plane and it might look the same as this other plane and which details went with which one. You're keeping them separate. They've got their own airspace. They're not sharing it. And it takes a lot less emotional load, mental load, and time, and the quality goes up significantly. And so what that means is that you have to break up your patient time differently, whether that's how much time do you have to see your hospitalized patients, how long are your patient visits. So let's say, if you're an outpatient clinician, 20 minutes is what you're given. And you're spending 20 minutes in the room with the patient, or your MA is spending 10 or 15 minutes in the room with the patient. So in order to successfully do this, we have to divide up our patient time. I want to be out of the hospital by this time. What's reasonable? And then we put that in a box and we have a goal. How long is that going to take? So in a 20-minute outpatient visit, you might say, okay, my MA needs to be out of the room within 5 minutes. The first 5 minutes I go in there is my H&P. We're going to talk about language that you might need to use with your patients in order to keep things on track. And then how much time do you need to do your after visit summary, orders, referrals, any review, and land that plane, get that chart note done before the next patient is ready to be seen. Very different concept. So for somebody who put in there, I spend too much time You're right. I did too. And when we can learn to be more focused, we can still get great quality care. Patients will care more about how fully present you are and the quality of your interactions, more so than the amount of time spent. So somebody spending 5 minutes in the room with a patient can have a better visit than somebody 20 minutes if you're focused and have an agenda. And so you can still do this. The person I told you that showed up on Monday and knocked it out of the park, she said it didn't negatively affect her interactions with her patients. And she's had a lot of experience in medicine. All right, we're going to shift to support. So has anybody ever asked for support and been ignored? Again, at home or at work? Anybody struggle with asking for support because you're like, I should be able to do this on my own? Or it's embarrassing or takes too much energy if you've got any teenagers or maybe even some spouses that you ask, and it takes just as much energy in order to get them to comply with your request as it does for you to just do it yourself. So you just say, never mind. Can anyone relate to that? And so we do need to start asking for support, and sooner and more often than we have been. And that is, I break it up into three: from yourself, by treating yourself more kindly, by being a cheerleader for yourself instead of berating where you're at, from that mindset work that we talked about. We're also going to need to ask for help from our staff. And so does anybody struggle with delegating to staff or putting some boundaries around what you're willing to do and allowing other people to do their job or take on new roles? Taking the time to train other people to take things off your plate. Anyone else struggle with any of that? Or is there things that your staff could help you with more that is not happening? And if that's the case, how can we tap into that? Okay. And then our family. And so I'm asking you to try some new things. It may take some more bandwidth and feel kind of clunky. So whether it's mental, physical, emotional energy, it may be helpful to say, hey, I'm going to need some help while I'm trying this new thing. Can you give me some extra support? And so as we talk about how do we ask for support and get different results, again, I pull this from one of my coaching platforms that talks a lot about influence and persuasion and how to use it, not in a manipulative manner, but in a manner that we can be more successful. And so let's say you're going to ask your spouse for extra support around the house, and you show up and you're like, so honey, there's this new thing. I know charting takes up so much time, or I'm always at the hospital late. I'm going to try this new thing, but I'm going to need you to do more of the shopping, take care of more of the kids' duties, help out more around the house because I'm not going to have the bandwidth. Okay. Are you in? How are they going to respond? Right. And I'm exaggerating, right? But how we ask for help makes a difference. And so with this model, it's super simple. 3 things. First, you acknowledge, honey, I know it's a burden. I know my time and energy is zapped by how much time it takes me to chart, by how much time I'm at the hospital. Thank you for putting up with that. And then you turn it into a win-win. When I can decrease the amount of time it takes to chart, we can have date night back. I'm going to be more fully present. We can have our weekends back. And then the affect. Are you showing up like Eeyore? Oh, there's this new thing. Or can you show up like Tigger, right? I'm so excited. I've heard so many people have had success. I think I can be the next one. Can you really help me so we can make this possibility, get date night back, have our weekends back? So the way you ask for support can have a difference. And you can use the same thing, whether it's the nurses at the hospital, whether it's your staff, your MA, how you ask them to help support you will make a difference. And I promise you'll get different results if you use this formula successfully. Communication. Showing up on a Monday and I have a completely different game plan, probably not going to work. And so again, planting some seeds with your family, your support staff, talking with your front desk staff, your MA or nurse, and even your patients. I'm going to be trying something new. It might feel a little awkward. Just wanted to let you know that's why it's going to look a little differently. Your communication with your patient might look like this. You know how I oftentimes run behind, or sometimes you're waiting a while to get results? I'm planning to do better. And the way we're going to do this is I want you to have better results. And so you're going to see me being really focused. You're going to see me doing more charting in the room. I'm still here. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'll keep you in the loop. and we're going to be laser focused. So we're going to focus on what's that one thing you have to have me fix or deal with today. And if there are other less important things, we'll find ways to address that. But it just may not be in today's appointment, but we're going to make sure we get that thing addressed and all your stuff wrapped up before the end of your appointment. This way, I'm going to be running on time. You're going to get your stuff done in real time, and we're going to make sure that you get your most high necessity needs taken care of. What do you think about that? So again, just an idea, but communicating with everyone about, I'm going to try something new, so that they don't just think like, why are you showing up so differently? Why are you doing this way instead of that way? And you're like, because I'm going to do even better. You may love me now. I'm going to be even better. Okay. And then the other piece is following up on that conversation. If you're trying something new with your MA about the way people are checked in and how you document, maybe they're going in with the after visit summary instead of you. Maybe the nurses are lumping more of their calls to you. We're going to talk about interruptions in a minute. So following up, is this working for you? Hey, do you have any ideas on how we might do it even better? Because chances are when you get better results, they're going to get better results. Okay. All right, now for the fun part. And let me do a time check here. So we're going to talk about using the clock to your advantage. And I get a lot of excitement about this. So time is like a gas. It will expand into the size container you give it. And so if you do not put boundaries on time that you're going to spend, it will expand. For example, when my kids were young, because I had overnight call and my husband was a firefighter with overnight duties, we had a live-in nanny. And what that did was I didn't have to leave the office at 5:30 or 6 to go pick up my kids from childcare. And it was easy because I didn't have to get them out of the house. And it was easy because the nanny could get them fed into bed if I wasn't there. But it enabled me to have an enormous container for my work. And had I known that time expanded like a gas into the container the size I will give it, I would have shrunk that container and made it so that I got home even when I didn't need to pick up my children from childcare. Same goes for your patients. If you see that 20-minute appointment time as all that time with the patient, instead of saying, I can afford to give 30% of that time or 50% of that time face-to-face because the other is all those other things you need to do with that patient, we will no longer allow it to expand because now we're aware. If we have a hard cutoff, I'm only going to stay at the office or at the hospital 60 minutes or less each day. Now we have a hard cutoff to our day. Okay. And now your brain is like, I've got an hour. I don't have 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to bring it home and have however many days. I'm not going to bring it home over the weekend, right? So the hope is we're going to get to transition so that you're down to 0 spillover after, with only 30 to 60 minutes left at the office or the hospital. Same thing with charts. You can make it a game. I'm going to spend no more than 10 minutes on my charts. I'm going to spend no more than 5 minutes at the end of each patient care. How can you automate things? How can you delegate? How can you streamline your processes? How can you take a pause to make one decision here that will then affect everything you do afterwards? For example, at my work, we had paper social and medical history forms. And when I had to input that information into the EHR, it took me 8 minutes. I timed it. When we got an MA and they started doing it, not just for me, but all the other providers, 8 minutes, every patient that walked through the door was saved from me, or maybe I had 30 seconds to review what the MA had put in. And the MA got so fast, she did it in 2 minutes or less. Okay. So I just took 8 minutes, multiply that times a year for however many providers that was. It was a specialty clinic. So we might've seen maybe 800 patients a year. 800 times 8 is a lot of minutes that those providers saved, me included. And then the time you leave the office, again, a hard stop, and then having a backup plan. If you don't finish by that time, maybe you need to go home, have some dinner, get a full night's rest, and you can come back in 30 minutes early to finish the next day if that's possible. But really holding yourself to that hard stop. All right, where do we lose time? I'm going to ask you to this little pop quiz. So we lose a lot of time through interruptions, distractions, and toggling. And this is some of the research-based information I'm going to share with you. So interruptions. Can you put in the chat, how many minutes does it take you if you're working on something that's not just a super simple task? How long does it take you to get back into the flow of work state that you were in after an interruption? You're working on charts, you're working on your index basket, and your MA just knocked on the door and asked you to switch to something else. How many minutes? 1 to 2, 8 to 10. Okay, I wish. About 23, and I've even seen 25 minutes to get back to that focus time. So what if you decreased your interruptions by 10%, 20%, 30%? How many 23 minutes would you get back? One person who attended this workshop got down to 0 interruptions from her staff. They started waiting for her to come find them. Do you know how much time that saved her? Do you know how much faster she got her work done because she didn't have all those interruptions? So if we can decrease interruptions, and that means then batching things together. So telling your MA or your support staff, hey, at this time and this time, I'm going to be yours. Gather your things. If it's an emergency, of course, come interrupt me. But if it's not, batch those things, and then I will find time for you. And if you can schedule a time, less chaos, more structure. We can distract ourselves with alarms on our phone, notifications on our computer. I've had some people put sticky notes so they can't see when new messages pop up because you're going to batch them. Emails, like, have a scheduled time. Don't be getting into your email basket because we're going to talk about toggling in a moment here. So decrease the distraction. Some people take social media off their phone because it's a draw, a magnet to them, and they're going to distract themselves. So what can we do to remove distractions? Because if a distraction then interrupts you, right? It's kind of a double whammy. And so eliminating interruptions and distractions, and then that's going to make you more efficient. And then toggling. So I'm going to share this concept of a triathlon. I don't do triathlons, but when I was creating this course, there was a triathlon going on in Salem, Oregon. And I thought, what would happen if I was in a triathlon and it starts out with the swimming, right? I'm in my swim gear, the gun goes off, and it's time to go. I jump in the water, I start swimming, I'm swimming. 10% into the length of swimming, the whistle blows, stop the swimming, get back out of the water, jump on your bike. Okay, now I got to get my bike gear on, get my special shoes on, click into the bike. Now I'm riding. Whistle goes off, stop your riding. Now it's time to run. Get off the bike, get your running shoes on. Now you're running. Whistle blows, get back in the water. Okay, so triathlons are hard enough as it is, just like our work as healthcare providers. Every time you're toggling back and forth between patient care, your in-basket, your MA's needs, your front desk, the nurse, the labs, you're toggling. And the way we're doing medicine is literally killing some of us. It's driving us to be anxious, depressed, sleep deprived, running health problems, and literally creating circumstances where we have women physicians 250 to 400 times the suicide rates of women in other professions. So let's not underestimate. If a triathlete was asked to do a triathlon this way, some of them would die too. So let's do things smarter so that we're getting the same work done, but we're doing it in a manner that actually works. Okay, let's swim, then bike, then run. And that means creating your day in a manner that supports that, right? Don't get in and out of your email in basket all day. Do it twice a day. Figure it out and share with other people, like your support staff. Can we decrease interruptions? They cause a 23-minute delay in our workflow. And then perfectionism, here we go. Can we give A+ care to our patients and do B- notes? What's necessary? There's a great book out there called Essentialism, and he really talks what's essential to go into that note so the patient gets quality care, that your partners know what you're talking about, but let's not overdo it. Okay, there's a lot of, you'll be getting an email. There's fewer documentation needs that are put out in, I think it's called Steps Forward. But for outpatient medicine, at least we're charting old ways and we're overdoing it for what's needed for billing and quality care. So the goal is note done before next patient. Whether you're inpatient or outpatient, it makes more sense because you're doing it in real time, stopping all the planes in the air. If this is your starting point, my hope is at the end, we can be more connected with ourselves and our families. We can breathe some fresh air, have some time, instead of always being tied to our computers, always being tied to the hospital, to our patients, and create some true leisure time, some true boundaries between work and home. It's possible. For some people, this is all they need. I love that. 1 hour and you get, 100 times, 800 times ROI just, by implementing these strategies. Some people need more help. And so what happened is when I saw that some people needed more help, I created a 4-week course that helps 4 more weeks of 1-hour calls, hot seat coaching. So we're actually coaching volunteers during that time, more resources, an actual learning portal, and recording replays. And so for some people, that 4-week course plus this 1 hour, like the 4-week course, you have to have the 1 hour first, they go together. And we dive deeper into those 3 buckets of the mindset, the support, and the clock. And some people have, I give access. You want to join us for the next round of this. I call it the Eliminate After Hours charting course. And for some people, they just need that ongoing accountability and help. So this is just a visual. There's some visual coaching aids. I have some printed flyers about land the planes. We didn't talk about getting into flow state, but if you can work 60 to 90 minutes uninterrupted on your bigger tasks, you can go up to 5 times faster. And does anybody ever get 60 to 90 minutes uninterrupted unless you're showing up, hours before clinic opens, or staying there until it closes, or shutting yourself in a room? So can we get more into that flow state? So there's some visual coaching aids. You get the recording of this workshop. So everybody here will have the recording of this workshop. I think it goes away in about a week, but you'll get in the learning portal is a recording of this or one of the prior workshops. You also get a recording for your support staff that can help them support you better. And then also baked into that is a 20-minute one-on-one charting strategy session, just you and I. And then it does come with 4 credits of Category 1 CME. I did create a QR code so you can scan it with your phone. It leads you to the page that shares some more information. So my hope is we can all have more success. And I have a lot of success stories from prior folks. I started this workshop back in July, and it was so successful the first Saturday. And I got that feedback from that person who on that very next Monday had success. I actually then said, I'm going to do it again on Saturday. And then I did it again and again and again. One hospital hired me to do this workshop for them, and then paid to have some of their employees do the 4-week course. So I don't know what's right for you. I'll stay on the call if you guys have some questions, but I'm really hopeful that you're going to be able to engage differently. If you need more support, I'm happy to share with you some resources, jump on a follow-up call or talk after this workshop to help you get some clarity and understanding on what's possible. And then on those one-on-one calls, or if you need, again, a call to kind of say, hey, help me understand what does this look like? I have seen huge results, and I'm so excited about sharing it and getting it out with other people. I had one workshop where 2 employees had heard about this from their medical director. Then they came to my next workshop, brought a 3rd employee. They all signed up together. So then they're all texting each other during their work about, my planes are all on fire. I can't, whatever. And then they're, supporting each other and giving each other, they have common language and able to go, okay, how can we do this? Another one, instead of giving up after, being behind for 3 charts, saying, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to get right back on it, and salvaging. So having 3 charts at the end of the day instead of 23 charts at the end of the day. So it's excited me to really see the difference that it's made in these people's lives, cutting in half the amount of time that they're spending after hours. Another client used to stay till 7 oftentimes. She's now routinely getting out by 6 to 6:30, and her goal is 6. And she's hitting that more and more commonly. And she has one-on-one coaching with me, as well as has done this course. But again, everybody needs different support, but tons of great results. So I'm super excited about sharing this information with you today. You can turn pennies into $1 million with consistency. You shave 2 minutes off of each patient encounter. You take 1/3 of the time to get your charts done, right? 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes. Add up all those minutes at the end of your year, at the end of your career. And for the person who said, I feel like I need to quit my job, I would be more than happy to get on a one-on-one with you. I also offer what are called like free strategy sessions, where people learn more about how can coaching help healthcare providers, because most people I have no idea what coaching is, never heard of it before. luckily I signed up for coaching back in 2017 before the research was even out showing that coaching can help decrease burnout and improve well-being. So if you can't tell, I'm super passionate about it. But one client went from actively looking for either moving clinics or moving jobs. I can't do this anymore, not sustainable, feeling dread every time it was time to go to work, feeling dread. And now that word hasn't come up in months. It's sustainable. So there are things that can be salvaged. And I can also help people make decisions where some people decide to quit a program. They decide to quit their marriage, so get clear on what they want, because staying in medicine isn't for everyone, but to get clear on that. And so I can also be a resource, not just about charting, but I help people maneuver through complicated circumstances based on my 25-year career in medicine, a leader in medicine, supervisor, and then also as a coach that I don't know that there's any other coaches in the state of Oregon that are physicians that have the same training that I do with 3 different coaching certifications. And so I bring a lot of things to the table, and I've helped people maneuver through some really complicated things. I've had a lot of complicated things in my own life that I've learned from. And so my hope is we can turn dread into sustainability and joy, feeling dejected and hopeless into feeling hopeful that I can make a difference. So don't hesitate to reach out. I had somebody reach out to me earlier this week. They've been on my newsletter list. They've been to a previous workshop and said, hey, I have a really big decision to make this week. They'd waited a year to reach out to me, and we had a phone call within 48 hours. I was like, this sounds really urgent. How can I help? And, the strategy call, it's free. It's something to get to know each other a little bit and say, can I offer anything to help you? I'm passionate about this. I know it is changing lives. And my goal is the more we can share the information with others, my hope is you're like, oh my gosh, this was so great. You got to go. You don't have charting needs, but do you know somebody who does? If you can lower the bar so low, it's impossible for you not to step over it. For me, I used to meditate. I'd get out of bed and I would stretch and listen to my meditation, but I liked staying in bed. And so I substituted, instead of snoozing, I no longer snooze, but when my alarm goes off, I turn on my meditation. So I get an extra 20 minutes in my nice warm bed and I meditate. Before I even got out of bed, I invested in that. And those meditations have saved me hundreds of hours of arguments with my family, hundreds of hours of not getting knocked off of my foundation because I was able to stay upright, kind of like Weebles wobble, but they won't fall down, right? Like, this morning, how many things went wrong this morning? I got an argument with my daughter because she wanted me to get out of her ski gear at 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I have a workshop in the morning. I need to get to bed, right? And I was like, okay, she didn't know I had this. This morning, my coffee spilled on my dress on my way here. I was like, of course it did, because the morning didn't go, okay, nobody's going to see the coffee stain when I show up, right? I'm able to course correct because I invest those few minutes every morning or most mornings. And I've done it for about 5.5 years now. I lowered the bar. I love spending that extra 20 minutes in bed. It used to be shorter. And then I was like, I need more. So can we do a mini meditation every time we wash our hands? Can we close our eyes and take a big belly breath every time before we transition to our next patient? How long did that take? Little tiny pennies in your bank account for calm, intention, happiness, joy, sustainability. How low of a bar is that? So that may be all you can commit to right now. And my hope is that we can then create a bigger wedge in your time, emotional, bandwidth, that then after you do this for a while and you've got that habit, every time before you see a patient, then you can habit stack. Now you're ready for the next one, but let's not overdo it, right? So you might pick 1, 2, no more than 3 things to implement this coming week, and then just keep it up with the sustainability and consistency. And that's going to get you amazing results. And then I remembered what I was going to tell you. I have a picture right here. Okay. I've read a ton of books because you don't have time to, so I give you all the cliff notes of the books. So there's a great book out called The One Thing that I read recently. And he shared research. And the research was with judges, parole judges in Italy, I think it was. And the judge's default answer, am I going to get parole? Their default answer was, nope, you're not going to get parole. So what they did was they measured what's the percent of yeses you're going to get parole with these judges. And they plotted it out across the day. What they found is the highest level of yeses was 65%, down to close to zero. When everybody gets a no, you don't get parole. And what they found was that there was a pattern to the answers. And so if you can see this, this is the pattern. And I don't know if it's showing up backwards. So here we go, over here, 65. First thing in the morning, when the judges showed up, those very first people asking for parole, they were at their highest likelihood to get parole. That was a 65%. The morning goes on, and then those numbers go down, down, down. Okay. And what they related this to is decision fatigue. Default, no. I have to have high energy to have a yes. Guess what happened here? In this dashed line, they had a late morning break. The next dashed line is their lunch break. Do you see what the breaks are doing? They're boosting those judges up to their highest capacity of decision making. And so do you see this lower one? And this is just my sloppy rendition, okay? How many breaks did this person get? And if they were on call the night before, maybe they started out at the bottom. So when we take a break and refill our cup, we can function up here more of our day. And so my mentor and coach, he has a break every 50 minutes where he moves, stretches, drinks water every 50 minutes. And he is SWAT team productive because he's up here all the time. Whereas many of us are functioning down here. As amazing as we may be, as much as my patients loved me and as much as I was promoted to leadership positions really quickly, as amazingly as I did, for 20 years, I wasn't tapping into my best potential because I didn't know this stuff. I didn't have a coach to help me unlearn some of the unhealthy things that I learned in my medical training with not setting boundaries, not paying attention to time, not paying attention to my own needs. So my goal is that I, share those little tidbits of information, and you think like, how long has it been since I've had a break? Where am I functioning on my graph? And even 2 minutes closing your eyes and stop staring at a screen and doing belly breaths, you'd be amazed. One client is taking a 5-minute walk at lunch instead of spending the entire time. First, she was attached to her computer. Then she went to take a break at her car, but she was still scrolling on her phone. And that wasn't serving her as well. I said, what would happen if you went and took a break? So now not only is she getting away from her screen, 5 minutes, she takes one lap around her clinic. She is moving her body. She is getting outside. And with my encouragement, she started inviting her colleagues. So now she's socializing and she's getting more connected with the people she works with. 5 minutes. And you know what else she did was, and if she'd been at her desk the whole time, she would have stayed down here. But now she at least got a little break. So now she can function back at the top of her decision-making curve. So just think about those little things as you orchestrate your day. I'm more than happy to provide whatever support that you might need to help you put those things in alignment. I'm happy to help share this message in whatever manner works. You can email me. I work with really busy people. And so some people, it's like, I can't find time for you during the week. And I do weekends and evening, interactions too, because I love working with people who are busy and overwhelmed, because that was me. And then helping create openings in their schedules and in their time, and not just their time, but their emotional tank. And I talk about that in some other workshops. So thank you so much. It was really great to see you all today. And again, look for those emails with follow-up, and just reach out and let me know how I can support you, and have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you next time. Bye.